October 13, 1972, marked the beginning of a harrowing ordeal that would test the very limits of human endurance and morality. Uruguayan Air Force Flight 571, chartered by a young rugby team and their families, was en route to Santiago, Chile, when it encountered unimaginable turbulence over the treacherous Andes Mountains. The pilot, confident in his navigation, began the descent, unknowingly steering them directly into the heart of the unforgiving peaks. In a horrifying sequence of events, the plane's wings were sheared off by the mountains, and the fuselage, now a mangled metal tube, hurtled down a steep glacier. The impact was catastrophic, claiming the lives of 12 passengers instantly. For the survivors, the initial shock and relief of being alive quickly gave way to a chilling new reality. They were stranded in an endless expanse of snow, thousands of feet above civilization, with no way to call for help. The initial days were a blur of chaos and hope. The survivors, mostly young men in their late teens and early 20s, tended to the wounded and took stock of their meager supplies. They huddled together inside the broken fuselage, their only shelter against the biting, sub-zero temperatures that plummeted even further at night. They found a small transistor radio, which became their only link to the outside world, a lifeline of hope. Every day, they would listen intently, praying for news of a rescue. Their spirits soared when they heard that search parties were looking for them. But as the days turned into a week, the news grew grimmer. The search area was vast, the white plane was invisible against the snow, and the authorities began to lose hope. Then, on the 8th day, the most devastating blow came. A voice from the radio announced that the search had been called off. The world had given them up for dead. The silence that followed that announcement was heavier than any avalanche. A profound, soul-crushing despair settled over the group. They were utterly alone. With the last of their limited food, a few chocolate bars and some small snacks, gone, starvation began its relentless assault. Their bodies grew weaker, their minds clouded by hunger. The freezing cold was a constant torment, but the gnawing emptiness in their stomachs was a more immediate and terrifying threat. It was in this state of desperation that an unspeakable idea began to form. Surrounded by the bodies of their friends and teammates, preserved by the freezing temperatures, a pact was made. It was a decision born not of savagery, but of a desperate will to live, to see their families again. They reasoned that their departed friends would want them to survive, to use their bodies as a means to continue living. It was an impossible moral choice, one that would haunt them forever, but it was their only choice. The first cut was the hardest, a violation of one of humanity's most profound taboos. But it was a necessary act to stave off certain death. This grim sustenance kept them alive, but the psychological toll was immense. They prayed for forgiveness, grappling with the weight of their actions, even as they knew it was the only way. Just when they thought their situation couldn't get any worse, disaster struck again. On the 17th night of their ordeal, a massive avalanche cascaded down the mountain, completely burying the fuselage in snow. The survivors were trapped in total darkness, entombed alive. For 3 days, they clawed and struggled in the cramped, oxygen-deprived space. The avalanche had claimed 8 more lives, and the survivors were left in a state of primal fear, surrounded by suffocating snow. They eventually managed to poke a hole through the surface, allowing precious air to filter in, but the experience left them even more broken and terrified. The avalanche, however, became a grim turning point. It solidified their resolve. They knew that staying put meant certain death. Rescue was not coming for them, they had to go to the rescue. They needed to cross the impossible mountains to find help in Chile. 2 of the strongest survivors, Nando Pardo and Roberto Canessa, were chosen for the expedition. They were given the warmest clothes they could fashion and larger rations of the frozen flesh. They knew it was a suicide mission, a final, desperate gamble, but it was their only remaining hope. Their journey was an epic feat of human endurance. They had no climbing gear, no proper clothing, and no idea of the true scale of the Andes. They climbed for days, battling altitude sickness, frostbite, and exhaustion, their bodies pushed to the absolute breaking point. At the summit of a massive peak, they expected to see the green valleys of Chile. Instead, they were met with a heartbreaking sight, more mountains, stretching as far as the eye could see. The despair was almost overwhelming. For a moment, it seemed their Herculean effort had been for nothing. But Nando, fueled by the memory of his family, refused to give up. He convinced Roberto to continue, to push onward. They altered their course, heading down into a valley where they eventually spotted signs of life, a small stream, some vegetation, and then, impossibly, a cow. After 10 grueling days of trekking, they stumbled upon a river. On the other side, they saw a man on a horse, a Chilean farmer named Sergio Catalan. At first, the roar of the river made communication impossible. Exhausted and barely able to stand, Nando threw a note wrapped around a rock across the water. The farmer read the message: "I come from a plane that fell in the mountains. We have been walking for 10 days. We have 14 people injured in the plane. We have to get out of here quickly and we don't know how." The farmer rode for hours to alert the authorities. The next day, rescue helicopters were dispatched. When the first helicopter finally reached the crash site, the 14 remaining survivors could hardly believe their eyes. After 72 days of unimaginable suffering and loss, their ordeal was finally over. The world was stunned to learn they were alive. The story of the survivors, who became known as the Society of the Snow, is a powerful and chilling testament to the strength of the human spirit. It explores the depths of desperation, the will to survive against all odds, and the impossible choices people make when pushed to the absolute edge of existence. Theirs is a story not just of survival, but of the profound bonds of fellowship that can form in the face of death. Thanks for watching. If you want to see more incredible stories like this one, don't forget to subscribe to Movies Recap Repo. We'll see you in the next recap.